Hello, fellow film fans. I know it's late for this posting, but that's just me. Sometimes I have stuff I have to do all day, and then I have a long period where I can rest. I'm getting ready to watch a movie, but I wanted to critique another movie while we have the chance here. I did want to talk about comedy today. The reason I wanted to talk about comedy was pretty simple. I think it is the most underrated of the art forms. Um, Give a brief history about comedy. Um, let's see here. Where do I begin? Well, you have to look at the two faces of the theater. Okay, starting way back in the theater or even storytelling. You have drama on one, comedy on the other. Okay? Now, the two have always been opposed to each other. Okay? Drama thinks that it is completely telling about life. It is not. Comedy is more true about telling of life, but it lacks discipline. Okay? So, you have these two constant forces butting heads. Comedy is a form of entertainment. It just always has been. You don't go to a comedy to really learn anything. I can't remember of any comedy that I ever went to. I was like, I'm really fascinated by what they have to teach me. You go there to laugh and to escape. That's the core of it. So you have again entertainment versus criticism. Okay. My job is to basically tease those both apart because I think comedy is just as important as criticism is, okay, or drama or whatever. Just like entertainment is just as important as being able to tell a good story. The movie I wanted to talk about today is a one that we've probably all seen, at least somewhat, even in bits and pieces, and that is ta-da-da-da, Step Brothers. There is the box. This is directed by Adam McKay. I believe he's the one that made The Big Short and recently the one about the vice president called Vice. I believe that's the same director. I would have to look it up to verify. This is one of his early works. You know, when you talk about comedy, you're talking about several different things here, which is why it's not considered to be one of the great classics. There are exceptions to that. There's Charlie Chaplin. Okay, that's definitely someone that is in the comedic realm. Okay, turn this down here. Oops. Excuse me for the large hand. I was just giving you a hand. Whew, I'm beautiful. All right. Anyway, so Charlie Chaplin had several comedic pieces that are critically analyzed today. It's because he used film technique. That is why they are. Just same as Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. There are a lot of film techniques that are used in that too. But comedy itself, because it's a form of entertainment and it lacks the discipline to be considered good, strong dramatics, particularly in the mise en scene, which is a fancy way of saying, in case you have not caught my other podcast, fancy way of saying everything you see and hear on the film that you're watching. So that is why it is typically not. However, I don't think that should be counted. Okay? Because I do think that what is the strongest indicator if a film is good or not is how much the audience really likes it. Okay, throughout time. Okay, I'm not talking about like what happened on IMDb years ago where everybody just absolutely loved The Dark Knight. I'm not saying The Dark Knight was a bad film. It was definitely a good film. But one of the best films of all time, I don't really think so. I mean, I'm sure it is in like a canon somewhere, and I have not given it really any thought to where it would be. But it is not in the top 10, if that makes sense. Like the audience has picked it to be. It's just not. It's not even close. If you're talking about audience satisfaction, then you're talking about a very fickle business, because what is audience satisfaction one day changes the next. Okay, what we used to go for in the 90s was a lot of high school-esque films, in particular, which one is that is standard is horror, but horror lacks a lot of credence to be taken into the next realm of being top movies of all time. There are definitely some that are, for sure. But again, this is one of those genres because it is so popular, it gets kicked out, and it lacks a lot of discipline. However, if you're talking about what people like over time, then comedy is kind of confusing to talk about. So why would I talk about Step Brothers when it's literally only about 10 years old? Well, because this is one of the classics. Okay, this will transcend, just like Dumb and Dumber. Think of it in many ways as like a Dumb and Dumber piece. Dumb and Dumber is one of the more classics. I would put that in the 250s, possibly 215, somewhere in there, 215 to 250. It was the first kind of, I don't know how to put this type of comedy. It's almost irreverent. It simply lacks so much discipline that that's what makes it funny. And Dumb and Dumber in particular had good mise en scène. It took you to places like the lovely 7-Eleven, Aspen, which is located in the French Alps. There's a lot of stuff that it took you to. And, it, of course, lampoons the rich, which is a major piece of comedy. It has been for a long time. Is lampooning the rich to seem that they are just like all of us in many ways. Okay? And this is no different. Step Brothers is more of a suburban tale. Okay? It takes place in any town, USA, right next to any city, USA. Okay? You can see any of it happening. There's my cat. Her name is the Notorious Betty, if you must know. She's a filthy booger. And regardless, I'm sorry, she's screwing around with something. Yeah. Please, for the love of God. But regardless, that is the way that goes. I'm going to go ahead and put in my headset now so I can't hear her as much. Okay, I do hope that is better. And again, with Step Brothers, you're talking about a film that lampoons average life. That's basically it. In particular, growing up and becoming an adult. What that looks like, what that feels like, how that is. It's lampooning it. It's taking it at such a unserious level that it's serious and it's quite tragic. The death of these men is essentially growing up. There's a long sequence where they do grow up. It's kind of a montage, so to speak, of them growing up, and they're miserable. They're unhappy, and it's kind of like saying that when we grow up, there are bright spots, but for the most part, we're unhappy, which, if it wasn't told in a comedy, would be very, very hard to take. But regardless of that, it's also talking about something a lot deeper than that, which is the love of family and the binding aspect of them. At the very core of this is two men that don't want to grow up, but for a specific reason, because they love their family so much that they want them to be together forever, because they both, in the end, try to win back the family, which is, I think, a really great message, that there can't be a part of you that dies off in old age or becoming an adult or whatever it is. And that's the ability to love unceasingly and to love without boundaries. Certain people, of course, and not seeing their faults, because that's basically what true love is not seeing their faults, which is a very beautiful message. And it's also, just to be frank with you, 100% hilarious, too. Just hilarious in every single way. The dialogue is great. Will Ferrell is at the top of his game. John C. Reilly is at the top of his game. These guys work great together. They are a great asset to each other. From what I understand from this movie, most of the dialogue was made up on the spot, which was a great directing tool. Very overlooked in the structure of this film, that he allowed them to just take great artistic liberty with this film and to make it kind of their own, which really speaks well to their improv abilities. I think on this particular level, both of them are in the same canon as Robin Williams, because the dialogue is absolutely masterful. Now, obviously, Robin Williams is zany and goes off on 1,000 tangents, but they were structured and they were pointing out something very realistic, But regardless, this is a great film. I would put this in the 300s, maybe mid 300s, somewhere in there. It's a good film, and it's definitely worth watching. As far as comedies go, there are other comedies that have been overlooked too, such as The Toxic Avenger, which is an entirely different class of film. It is by far and away
the most outstanding B movie of all time. Then you're starting to get into the hundreds, really, when you talk about The Toxic Avenger, which is a comedy, by the way. Um, I'm trying to think what else to kind of give you a sense of the fact that comedies do exist in this canon. I'm trying to think of a more recent one that was a comedy that was also very, very funny. Um, well, I don't have it right off the top of my head, and I'm not going to waste your time on it. But again, like I said, this is a very quotable movie, and it is very, very, very good. Sorry, I had to spray my cat. She was biting my cord. I apologize. Let me get some of this water off here. Okay, sorry about that. Get to see my discipline. Discipline runs strong in this house. Okay, but regardless, it's a great film, and I highly recommend watching it. If you've never watched it, I don't know how that's possible. Anytime it's on TV, like I think probably at least 17 hours of every day. So there should be no reason why you haven't watched it. But if you haven't, please give it a watch. It's a very, very good movie. If you can think of a comedy that belongs in the top 500, please, by all means, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. For now, I'm going to bid you adieu, and you have a great night.